What's up YouTube? My name is Amy Bro. For this video we are going to be discussing a topic which came up recently in the wrestling news world. And that is WWE wants to introduce LGBT characters into their wrestling programs. Alright, I am going to come at this topic as someone who has wrote for e-wrestling, e-fetting for almost 2 decades, okay, and as someone who more recently has been writing fan fictions that do involve pairings or ships who are, at least in the particular canons I'm writing, happen to actually be. Okay? Something we have to think about when we see these wrestlers is, or these characters, can they be, without it being so overtly offensive to some people? Because here's something that people don't realize, okay? Yes, this is 2016. Yes, LGBT characters are starting to be more incorporated into mainstream media. However, there are still people out there that will not accept these types of relationships, and therefore, by proxy, these types of characters. So let's think about where professional wrestling is, and I'm also going to explain the way I've wrote characters like this, and you'll see how I feel WWE should either A, not touch it at all, or B, if they're going to, be very, very careful. The thing we have to understand is also, when I'm talking about this, is understand this is 2016. 50 years ago, maybe even longer than that, you could be arrested just for being out and proud. Think about that for a minute. You could be arrested. Now we've got pretty much worse when we've had people getting murdered because of it. Hell, what was it, in 1997 Matthew Shepard was murdered? And he was a good, from what I understand, I would have to go do double check, but he was a good kid. He didn't bother nobody. So he was gay, big deal. He got bullied, and I believe he was murdered. And Jason Collins, who was in the NBA as a member of the Washington Wizards, wore the number 97 on the back of his jersey because he himself was an openly gay basketball player. Think about that. Okay? And we also had Michael Samms, who was drafted. Okay? So, in actual sports, things like this have happened. We've had athletes who were gay, and they got drafted, and they were put on actual sports teams. In professional wrestling, we've also had characters or wrestlers who portrayed a very extravagant personality, very flamboyant personality. For examples you can think of, right offhand, I'm sure, are Gorgeous George, Adrian Street, Adorable Adrian Adonis, and Goldust. There's probably more. If you want to also go a more current, you can go maybe Orlando Jordan, and of course, the Billy and Chuck situation with Rico Constantino, who was on American Gladiators, and I actually watched the tournament that he won in the 80s. Was it the 80s or the 90s? It was one of two. Anyway, beside the point. Professional wrestling has always had a very interesting wide array of characters. But sometimes I think professional wrestling needs to understand that changing with the times is good, but being careful with the changes you're making is even better. Yes, in probably 99, or we'll say 95% of all fan fictions that you read, there are male-male or female-female pairings. Nothing wrong with that. Hell, I write them. But you also have to understand that the people who write those understand the characters they're writing because they've observed the media. They've either observed or read the media for which they're basing their fan fictions off of. I have been a writer of fan fiction since about 1996, 1997. About the same amount of time that I was involved in a hobby called e-fetting. More recently, I have started writing fan fictions on a more regular basis, and I have wrote characters who were gay / lesbians. Okay? And in some cases, bisexual. But I am very careful with how I write it, because I know when I write the characters, I don't want to offend anyone in that community. That's not my goal. In the old days, it was more accepted in the 40s and 50s to use a character like this to rile up the audience. But then again, in those days, there were more people that were probably anti-LGBT than there were pro. Believe it, the supporters were more than likely a minority versus the majority of the antis. Now it's 2016. You have gay marriage legal currently in all 50 states of the United States of America. Okay? In other parts of the world, I believe Japan is one of them, they actually recently started recognizing same-sex marriages, because even though in some of their mangas or some of their actual animations, they can either subtly hint at or actually have male-male or female pairings. It's still over there not as widely accepted. And yes, this is a place that has, people that can and will dress up in, clubs and stuff, and hell, we have that here in America. But, the point is, it does get, to a degree, still looked at as taboo in some parts of the world. So you have to be careful, especially if you're having those characters, like I said, in Japan. So, WWE is going to be incorporating these types of characters into their shows, or wants to. Let's assume, for 30 seconds, that they have writers on their creative team that know how to write these types of characters. Then all's well in the world, and they will more than likely be treated with respect. However, here's the concern. Assume that they don't. Assume they have 20 plus writers and none of them has ever watched a show in which there was a character who was bisexual, gay, or lesbian. Then you have to be careful, because now if you write a character who's a comedy figure, you're making a mockery of a community whom has been struggling to gain acceptance for so long, and now they kind of have it, or they're kind of getting it, and you're going to literally make them take about 10 steps back. Because whether or not we believe it, WWE is still watched by 3 million, at least between 2 to 3 million people on Raw and about 1 to 2 million people on SmackDown. And 2 million people is still nothing to sneeze at, whether people want to believe that or not. In that 2 million, in that 3 million, so let's combine it together, about 5 million. In that 5 million people, how many of them have the mindset that lesbians and gays are people too? How many of them are accepting of that fact? There's probably still a good number of people that have not given up on their homophobic beliefs yet. And the worry that I have is that the button you're going to try and push on people is that homophobic button. The worry that I have as someone who can write these types of wrestlers and characters respectfully is you don't know how to write them without offending someone. I have wrote myself, I have wrote other original characters in same-sex relationships. I know that they are. I don't have to tell the reader that they are. I can show them, but not do it in a way that I know is going to offend them. That's the dangerous line you're toting if you do this. You have to figure out how to write the characters without turning off people. Because if you have 3 million people watching and you start introducing these characters and say they're actually wrestling, how many of that 3 million is actually going to stick around and watch? How many people are going to watch those particular characters or wrestlers compete in matches? Because let's be honest, usually those types of characters don't get far in WWE. Those types of wrestlers don't. Yes, Goldust was an Intercontinental Champion. Big whoop. And yes, we know that Goldust wasn't actually gay, and he actually said that in an interview. But where has someone like Darren Young, who came out as gay, how well has he done in the company? If you're going to introduce someone like this, you have to assure that part of your audience, if there's actually people in the audience who enjoy watching it that are gay or lesbian or LGBT in some way, you have to assure them outright that you are going to treat them with the utmost care and respect to the community they're supposed to be representing, because it is still a very marginalized part of society, and there are people that would rather not see a healthy relationship on television because it galls them for some reason. There are writers for actual television shows that think it's cute and funny still to kill off those types of characters. I have never done that. Never. In 18 to 19 years, okay, I have never wrote a same-sex relationship where a character who was in a same-sex relationship died. I have never wrote one where either or both were shot, stabbed, drugged, kidnapped, anything. Because I know that's not my place. Yes, I'm a writer. I can pretty much do what I want, but I also know, excuse me, I also know that the audience that I'm trying to reach doesn't want to see that. They want to be able to read a relationship where two characters have a very healthy and caring and loving relationship. Yes, professional wrestling is a whole different animal. We get this. But still, you owe it to that segment of your audience to show the respect and the care for them. Otherwise, what good's it do? You understand? You can't mock them. If you do, what does it do? And even better, if you're someone who's just watching it on television and you see these characters and you see them looking really over the top and garish, I believe is a term, that's going to turn you off from watching, and it's probably going to make you think that everyone in that community is like that. I got news for you. I'm not going to name them, but I know people in that community. There's some, and I'll tell you this right now, there's a good portion of them that are my best friends, and I love them all dearly. I do not want to see them, their community taken as a joke. That is why when I read the headline and when I read the article, I had to sit and think about how I was going to approach this topic, because it's a very deep and personal one for me. And this is coming, by the way, again, from someone who, as of this recording anyway, he believes he's still a straight man. But, hey, if a dude came to me and he said he loved me, cool. See where that goes. The point of it is that it needs to be treated with respect. I don't give a damn what form of media. I don't care if it's a fan work, if it's a fan fiction, if it's a fan art. I've always believed that type of thing should always be treated with respect. Because if you don't, you turn off a lot of people. And those are people you never get back. Even if you write a 15-page apology, you would never get them back. So, this isn't just directed at WWE, this is directed at any wrestling company in the world. If you honestly believe in your heart of hearts that you have to write a character like this, you better understand what you're writing. You're no longer writing something which can really be treated as a joke. Or, hell, it shouldn't have even been in the first place. But now you're writing something that is fighting so hard to gain acceptance and representation. And that is something that you seriously, seriously need to consider. Because, in the end, they're people too. They have feelings. And you need to respect them. You need to respect them hard. Because if you don't, like I said, and I'll repeat it, you won't get them back. Please, please, do the right